Part two of our psychology of learning. We're looking at our fourth topic, which is self-esteem. So the key ideas here: understanding the role of self-esteem in skill performance, and understanding the factors that impact or influence the self-esteem. So things like the coach, the feedback, the level of competition. So starting off, looking at what is self-esteem. So it's defined as the regard that the person holds for themselves or how one sees themselves. So some confuse that with confidence. This is incorrect because someone with good self-esteem have good faith in their ability to attempt to do something. Where you might have somebody who's good self-esteem but have low confidence potentially. It's also referred to as self-concept. So positive self-esteem encourages greater self-confidence and willingness to attempt, participate, or complete tasks, which again we know that will improve that skill learning process. So things that you can be influenced or affected by experiences at any time. If it's positive, the learner will be more willing to continue, and it is essential. The self-efficiency is essential to self-esteem. So the belief that the learner has in their ability and persistence to achieve and master a challenge. And it's not bragging about what they can do, it's just being aware of what they can do. So even when difficult challenges are set, learners with good self-esteem believe in their ability. So many skilled performance often base their self-worth on success. So feelings of success should be based on how well the performers did something or gave it their best. People with good self-esteem believe they haven't reached their potential yet, rather than feeling they've failed. So that feeling of failure being you just haven't been able to complete, rather than that good self-esteem is we've got the skills up to that point, we just need to improve to be able to hit that mark. So the relationship between self-esteem and performance can be seen here. So the self-esteem, believing that they can do well in their performance because they fear having their ability ultimately judged by this. That links to performance. This has a major impact on that self-esteem. If performance is poor, self-esteem can drop. If performance is good, self-esteem can rise. So, in the case study, a player in a volleyball game was having a terrible game. They'd been set the ball a number of times and only had made one good kill. So I hit for a point. That all the others had been either blocked or had been errors. They turned to the setter and asked them not to set anymore, and they would simply run dummy balls, ones their opponents thought they were going to hit. So explain how the self-esteem of the hitter was affected by the performance of the game. So we can see that the player had then perceived their inability to hit a winner was a reflection to their ability to play. They affected their confidence, which is linked to self-esteem, which then affected their performance. So you could see that they had to change their game plan around the fact that that person had lowered their self-esteem because they'd made some error. Explain what could have been done in the situation. The setter could have told them that they were too good a player to be playing like this all night, and then they could keep trying. They could also be substituted out of their game. However, that might impact on the confidence and self-esteem. But ultimately, we look at that idea of the positive feedback and reaffirmation and making sure that we are making them aware of their good capabilities, so then they can turn that mental performance around. So what you need to do now is pause, go to page 242, and do the focus questions on self-esteem. So the last topic in this psychology of learning looks at skill learning and models of coaching. So acknowledging or getting the knowledge of the different types of skill learning and their effectiveness. So understand the application of methods of coaching and the effect that these type of skill learning has, and the function of communication of an effect on skill learning. So skills are seen as skills are different as seen as in the beginning of this section. They are best learned by using different methods. So we talked about the whole part whole, the pure part, which is a skill broken down into parts. Each section is learned in isolation, and the progressive part, where each phase of the skill is practiced and sequentially added as the skill is rehearsed. For example, part A is taught, then added B, then added C, etc. So different complexity makes learning occur at different rates. So the rates of learning can be seen here. So you can see the number of practices correlates with the measure of performance and the rate of improvement. where here we can show that the learning is easy to start with and then tapers. So the number of practices, so we see a good improvement early and then tapering off quickly. And if the learning is difficult, we can start with that negative learning curve where we are slow to improve, but once we gather the understanding of the skill, we can see rapid improvement. The most probable curve is that stepped curve. So learning takes place in stages where the competence is reached with new challenges and further learning takes place. So we can see there might be steps and rates of what we do things and the way we learn those different skills. Links can be made between the methods used to teach the skills and the rate of learning. This is very important. For example, the negative learning curve could be associated with a pure part method, the method of teaching selected because the skill may be extremely technical or difficult. But we can understand that each type of skill might have a specific way of teaching it, which is the most beneficial or the most efficient way for that learner to learn it. So a primary school PE teacher decided to teach their pupils a long jump. They started by making students do stationary jumps for distance from a fixed point. First used their left foot to take off, then their right, which was followed by sprints for speed using a variety of distances, for example 5 metres and 10 metres, etc. Once it was completed over a number of lessons, the teacher began to instruct the discipline of the long jump. So explain the skill learning method the teacher was using. So they were using the pure part method. So the skills were taught in isolation of each other and only put together at the end. So for example, the takeoff followed by the approach or the run-up. If they had taught the takeoff and then added the jump, that might have been a part method where they're adding on to each discipline, or if they went teach the different parts, then get them to do the whole long jump and then teach the parts again, that would be a whole part whole. When doing the proper long jump, the students found the skill harder to perform and the rate of skill learning seen was similar to that in the graph. Explain a cause for this. So the answer is students had a difficulty linking the two stages of the skill taught, which is understandable, and therefore found the mastery quite difficult at the beginning. This is atypical of seen as negative learning curve. With time, however, competence would have been achieved. So communication is very important. So that the teacher or the coach needs to make sure they have appropriate communication skills, because it has a great effect on the skill learning. So it's the ability to share meaningful information by exchanging experience. So for communication to be effective, it needs to meet the certain qualities. So it's called the 6 C's. So to be clear, information has to be presented clearly, has to be concise. So don't make it too long-winded, get to the point, particularly if you're looking at beginning learners, but also autonomous. You want to make sure the message is short and sharp and they understand exactly what you're talking about. So it needs to be correct. So it needs to be accurate, not misleading. It needs to be courteous, so it has to be polite and not threatening to avoid conflict. Complete, so give all the information, not just a bit. And it needs to be constructive, so it has to be positive, not negative or critical. And if you are going to be critical and looking at mistakes, you need to give them a plan of how they're going to fix that. So communication can be effectively delivered providing it addresses certain factors. So why does a message need to be communicated? Who is the communicator being communicated to? When and where is the message best delivered? So you've got to find what situation, you're going to deliver it after a really emotional period, or you're going to make sure when everybody's calm and ready to listen. What message is going to be communicated, and how is information going to be delivered? So what is the best method to deliver it? So communication can be made in 2 ways. So it can be made in verbal, so a message transmitted verbally by word of mouth or piece of writing, or non-verbal. So non-verbal communication is receiving the wordless method, e.g. gestures, body language, position, posture, tone of voice, or facial expressions. And that can be has a greater impact sometimes than non-verbal, because it can be unclear to the learner. So to deliver effective information, the learner and performers, coaches, instructors or teachers need to develop certain capabilities. For example, they need to develop good non-verbal and verbal skills. They need to ensure they provide positive feedback succinctly in a meaningful way to the learner. They need to give all learners equal attention. They need to communicate in a way that is appropriate to the learner and think about their learning styles and listen as much as they talk. So communication is a two-way street. So communication needs to be positive most of the time to be valuable. It needs to be presented in a way that allows the learner to make effective change. Unfortunately, communication can often be blocked. So difficulties in getting information across to a learner can be due to a number of blocks, including the perception, so the learner's idea of what is needed and is different to that of the instructor or coach. The conclusions, so the learner focuses on what they think is going to be said instead of what is actually being said. The knowledge, so the lack of understanding in relation to what is being said. The motivation, so a lack of focus on what is being said. Does the learner actually want to listen to what is being said? And expressing, so the difficulty in saying what needs to be said. So as a case study, a young volleyball team was learning the skill of spiking in volleyball. Two coaches were talking and training, with each taking half the team. Each coach had a different method of teaching the technique. So Coach A used a method where they put dots down on the court to show foot position during the approach, and they gave the following instructions. Use 3 steps, then a left, then right, jump to a maximum height using your arms before the left right. They made sure they focused on each player as they spoke, and players then ran practice dry runs practicing a takeoff. Coach B used a method where they demonstrated what they wanted using the whiteboard. They gave the following instructions. The takeoff uses 5 steps, starting with the left foot and finishing with the left foot. Each step gets longer and faster. The steps are referred to as the step close. Make sure your arm swing occurs in the 3rd step. They often had their backs to the group because they were riding on the board. Then they threw the balls in the air and the player attempted to hit them. Explain how the coaches use non-verbal communication in their coaching. So the use of dots and the whiteboard are non-verbal techniques. They are used to facilitate the explanation of the technique and form a picture in the players' minds of what needs to be done. So explain using criterion diagram 1 whether Coach A uses effective communication. So absolutely, essentially no, because it's not clear. It can be misleading, therefore not entirely correct. They have provided bits of information, therefore it's not complete. The instructions to a degree are very vague and do not give the players the clarity needed to do the technique properly and successfully. Coach B's presentation shows a lack of knowledge in terms of what they need to be taught and how to teach it. The technical information could cause a lack of perception in the players. The players will draw conclusions from what is said and they may not have handled the information well. Given they will move straight into hitting the volleyballs, they are unsuccessful. If they are unsuccessful, motivation will soon drop as well. Alright, what you need to do is go through and read. With that, there's some information on coaching styles from page 243 to 245, which is a little bit different. And you also need to go back to 6.2 and finish the questions there.